Welcome into Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. On today's show, we will look ahead to see what it will take for the Seahawks to have a perfect offseason. With Seattle playing on Thursday Night Football last week, that gives us a few extra days to get ready for the offseason and do some looking ahead with just a few weeks to go in the regular season. We'll discuss what it would take for the Seahawks to get everything done they need to get done in just a few moments from right now. Before we do, though, we haven't checked in on the Noti Gang in a while, and you may be wondering, what is the Noti Gang? Well, the Noti Gang is the real ones that have their notifications turned on, and they're the first ones to see exactly what we're doing here on Seahawks Today. Turn your notifications on so you never miss a moment of Seahawks Today. For the latest news, rumors, watch parties, live shows, we cover your favorite team like no one else does. Turn on notifications, and here's what I'm going to do. The first 10 people that type Noti Gang in the comments section of today's video, the real ones that have their noties turned on, we're going to shout you out later in the week here on Seahawks Today. On today's show, we look at what it would take for the Seahawks to have a perfect offseason. Last offseason was awesome for the Seahawks, in particular what they did in the draft. But now, as the Seahawks turn another page here, can they take that next step and build upon what they did last year? Well, let's look at the outlook for the Seahawks heading into the offseason. Currently right now, that's 7-7 record, and the team needs, you include the center position, safety, linebacker, defensive tackle, running back, wide receiver, and offensive guard. Some notable free agents that the Seahawks have right now include Geno Smith on that list, as well as Rashad Penny, also Poona Ford, not to mention Phil Haynes and Drew Lock are also free agents for Seattle as well. But when it comes to the draft, for the second straight year, the Seahawks have 9 picks. But this time they have 2 first-rounders as they have the Broncos pick. And if the draft were held right now, Seattle would hold the number 3 pick from Denver, and they would hold the number 15 pick of their own. So 2 top 15 picks potentially if the season were to end today for the Seahawks. So what would it take to have a perfect offseason? Well, first and foremost, the Seahawks, the number one order of business is to re-sign Geno Smith and to give him a new contract. And whether you think Geno Smith is a long-term solution or not, I think all of us can agree that Geno Smith deserves to be back next year and that you need to have him back. And look, I have said this and I will reiterate once again. Even if Seattle, let's say in this upcoming draft, finds a quarterback that they like, that they cannot go out without having, I still think even then you bring Geno Smith back and you have like an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes type situation where Geno's your guy until your next guy, like a Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud or whoever it may be, is ready to go. Couple options contract-wise for Geno Smith. Sporting News put this out a while ago. 2 different ideas. One of them is a 2-year deal, which would be a total value of about $28 million with about $14 million a year and 75% of that guaranteed, about $21 million that would be guaranteed there. Option number 2, a 3-year deal, but not nearly as much guaranteed, just 52.4% with $33 million. Average money about $21 million, and the total value would be $63 million. And I'll say this too. The Seahawks, the longer they go in the offseason without giving Geno Smith a deal, I think the more his price tag goes up, because with other teams desperate for quarterback play as well, and what Geno could bring to the table being an upgrade for a lot of teams, I think if the farther out he goes in the open market, the more he could potentially cost you. I would say that this is the first thing you have to do to avoid the price tag getting too high on Geno Smith. How long would you sign Geno Smith for? That's our pin comment today. You might get an ad break, if so, take advantage of it. Get your votes in. 2 for 2 years. Type 3 for 3 years. Let me know in the comment section below what you would do. Number 2 on my list of priorities for the Seahawks is drafting either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. And I know that a lot of you are going to say that, hey, Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud should be the number one pick that the Seahawks have. I don't know if those guys are going to be available by the time the Seahawks have the number 3 pick. But I have been adamant, I've said on this show, and I'll say it again, that a guy like Will Anderson is too good to pass up on. Doesn't matter what your quarterback situation is, you can't pass up on Will Anderson. Will Anderson would be my first choice. And the awards, they all kind of speak for themselves. 2-time unanimous All-American. Was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year the last 2 seasons. He's won all of the awards you can think of. But then Jalen Carter from Georgia is outstanding in his own right. A unanimous All-American, a first-team SEC player this past year, and also won a national championship with Georgia last season, has a chance to win another national title with the Dogs this year as well. And so, while I have said that Will Anderson is my favorite player in the draft, Jalen Carter actually might be my second favorite player in the draft. And both these guys would go a long way for this Seattle Seahawks team. I don't think you can miss on either option. If Will Anderson's already gone, then you go with Jalen Carter. What about you, though? If you could pick one to draft, if both guys are on the board, are you going with Will Anderson or are you going with Jalen Carter? Let me know in the comment section. Type WA for Will Anderson. Type JC for Jalen Carter. Let me know how you're feeling about that. Would you go with Will or Jalen Carter if you could choose between one of the two? I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Fetch. Use the Fetch app for iPhone and Android to scan your receipts to earn points and turn those points into gift cards. Whether you're shopping at Target, Walmart, grocery shopping, or even your local mom and pop store, you can earn reward points by scanning your receipts with Fetch. You can also connect your Amazon account and your email to earn points on all your e-receipts. Use my link to download, chatsports.com/Fetch, and enter the promo code CHAT at sign up for 5,000 points when you scan your first receipt. That's the equivalent of a free $5 gift card to get started. As you accumulate points, you can click on Redeem in the Fetch app and choose from hundreds of stores and restaurants like Amazon, CVS, or Starbucks to turn those points into gift cards, and you can see how easy it is to use. The 5,000 bonus points are only for a limited time. So get started now, chatsports.com/Fetch, and enter the promo code CHAT. The link is also in the comments and the description of today's video. All right, moving on now. Let's continue with what it would take for the Seahawks to have a perfect offseason. And I look at the D-line and the linebacker spots, and they need upgrades. Now, what to me is unclear is exactly your pathway to upgrading those spots, whether it's making trades, whether it's free agency, or even in the draft. But what I can tell you for sure is that it's not good enough as is, those D-line and linebacker spots. I don't want Cody Barton starting next year. I'll be honest, okay? And a number of guys, there needs to be some wholesale changes to those spots. Let's look at the D-line, for example. Poona Ford is actually one of the best D linemen out there on the free agent market, in addition to Marcus Davenport, Javon Hargrave, Darren Payne, among company. I mean, there's some really good players on the free agent market when it comes to defensive linemen. Meanwhile, you look at linebackers. Roquan Smith is going to be a free agent. I would expect that the Ravens are probably going to bring back Roquan Smith, give him the money that he wants to stay. But for now, he's listed as a free agent. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. There's some talented players when it comes to the linebackers in the D-line spots. So whether it's dipping your toes into free agency, making trades, going into the draft, whatever it may be, there are options. There's no reason why those positions for Seattle should be good enough that you should be content with who you are. There is availability out there. There is reason to go shopping and come back with what you had better than what you began with personally. So, what about Poona Ford? Do you think Seattle should re-sign Poona Ford if the money and everything is equal, knowing what we know now with Poona Ford? To me, that's going to be interesting. The fact that he'll be one of the best players on the market for his position. Do you think they should? Let me know in the comment section. Type S for sign, P for pass if you think Seattle should re-sign Poona Ford or not. Next up, let's talk about drafting at the running back and wide receiver positions. Now, Kenneth Walker has been fantastic. He was a really good draft pick by Seattle in the second round, but I think it's been pretty evident that Kenneth Walker needs a running mate of some sorts. Look, Rashad Penny went down earlier in the year. Travis Homer and DJ Dallas never really filled that void either. And I got to tell you, there's some good running backs in this draft. Bijan Robinson's going to be probably a top 10 pick. Don't see Seattle being in position necessarily to want to draft a guy that high like Bijan Robinson. But you look at down the board here, even Dwayne McBride at UAB is fantastic. Zach Evans at Minnesota. There will be plenty of guys to choose from for Seattle to find that number 2 back to complement Kenneth Walker and to have some fresh legs, a young running back in that core. And then you look at the receiver options. Now, Marquise Goodwin was kind of just a placeholder of some sorts for this year. Ideally, you would like to be able to draft a receiver to be the number 3 guy next year behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And when you look at some of the receivers, there's a lot of options there too. Jordan Addison at USC, Quentin Johnston at TCU, he's really good. I like Jackson Smith at Ohio State a whole lot too. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that's going to be up there, as well as teammate. Zay Flowers, Josh Downs. But if you're looking for a guy that I think could slip to being a day 2 or maybe even a day 3 guy potentially, is Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. To me, this could be quite the steal on the Seahawks' part, and I think would be a really good option for Seattle to be that number 3 receiver. Marvin Mims out of OU, first team All Big 12 this past year, had over 1,000 yards receiving. And this Oklahoma team, this was the worst OU team in quite some time that was there in Norman, and he didn't have consistent quarterback play. Dylan Gabriel got hurt at one point. Things weren't great for Marvin Mims in that Oklahoma team, and yet he still managed to put 1,000 yards out there. He kind of reminds me of Elijah Moore. If you can get an Elijah Moore type as your number 3 receiver, then I think you're feeling really good if you find a guy like Marvin Mims. And we've seen Oklahoma put out some really good receivers over the years as well. I would love it if Marvin Mims found his way onto the Seattle Seahawks team if they were able to get him later on, as CBS Sports currently right now has him with a ranking of about their 69th best player in the draft this year. So maybe somebody to keep an eye on for potentially later on. You tell me, should Seattle draft Marvin Mims? Is that a guy you like to potentially bring to the Seattle Seahawks team? If so, type play for yes. If not, type in for no. Let me know in the comments section if you would draft Marvin Mims. Last on the list is upgrading the offensive guard and center positions. And, what have we talked about for the last 4 or 5 weeks is Seattle struggles to run the football, and in particular, the interior of the offensive line. The guard and center positions have not been great, and they need changes. Look, you have your starting bookend tackles for many, many years to come with Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. That's all great. But trying to fix the interior, that needs some help. And kind of like what we talked about with the D-line and linebacker spots, when we say upgrade, trades, free agency, draft, all options are on the table. But let's show you just kind of some of those players that are out there at the free agent spots for offensive guard and center positions. Elgin Jenkins is a really talented player with the Green Bay Packers. Dalton Reisner, a former K-State Wildcat, was a really good football player with the Cats. He's been solid for the Denver Broncos. He could be a good fit. A couple veterans at the center position. Jason Kelsey with Philadelphia, one of the all-timers. I think Jason Kelsey's probably going to be a future Hall of Famer potentially. Mitch Morse with the Buffalo Bills. He was also really good with the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll be a free agent. And then Nate Davis of the Tennessee Titans is going to be available as an offensive guard as well. So you got options if you go to the free agent market for some guys besides just potential draft players or through trade, either one. There'll be guys that the Seahawks potentially could go out there and spend if they choose to do so. So you make the call. Name a player the Seahawks should add this offseason, whether it's a trade, free agency, draft. Just name a player. Who do you want to see wearing a Seattle Seahawks action green uniform in 2023? Let me know in the comment section. Name a player that you think the Seahawks should add. As always, you can follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live, and I'll see you next time right here on Seahawks Today.